You know that feeling when the heat is so oppressive. It feels like a physical weight pressing down on your chest. That was the summer of 2014 in my hometown. We were stuck in a drought that turned the entire county into a dust bowl. The asphalt radiated heat waves that distorted the air, and the grass in everyone's front yard had turned a brittle, sickly yellow. I was 16 that year, stuck in the awkward limbo between childhood and adulthood, spending my days trying to find anywhere with air conditioning. My little brother, Mikey, was 10. He didn't care about the heat. He was just bored, kicking a soccer ball against the peeling siding of our garage for hours on end. That boredom ended the day the white truck rolled onto our street. It didn't look like any ice cream truck I had ever seen. Usually, they are beat-up vans with rusted wheel wells and stickers peeling off the side, blasting distorted music that sounds like it's being played underwater. This truck was different. It was immaculate. It looked like a restored classic from the 50s, with blinding chrome bumpers, white wall tires that looked brand new, and a paint job so white it hurt your eyes to look at it in the direct sun. There were no pictures of cartoon characters or lists of prices on the side. Just a single serving window and a loudspeaker mounted on the roof. The music was the first thing that put me on edge. It wasn't Pop Goes the Weasel or The Entertainer. It was a melody I couldn't place, a simple, looping chime that sounded more like a wind-up music box than a digital recording. It was pretty, but after listening to it for a few minutes, it started to grate on my nerves. It felt heavy. The driver was a man who looked like he had been preserved in formaldehyde. He was impossibly tall and thin, with skin that was pale to the point of translucence. You could see the blue veins pulsing in his temples. He wore a uniform that matched the truck. Crisp white shirt, white paper hat, black bootie. He never smiled. He just watched the kids with these watery, pale blue eyes that didn't seem to blink enough. He only sold one thing. There was no menu. No bomb pops, no choco tacos, no SpongeBob faces with gumball eyes. He had a single stainless steel tub built into the counter. He used a silver scoop to serve perfectly round spheres of a pale, pink substance into plain wafer cones. He called it the special. Mikey was the first kid on our block to buy one. I remember watching from the porch. Mikey ran up, clutching a crumpled $5 bill our mom had given him. The tall man leaned out of the window. I saw his hand brush against Mikey's fingers as he took the money. His fingers were long, skeletal, and looked incredibly strong. He handed Mikey the cone, and my brother took a bite immediately. I have never seen a reaction like that to food. Mikey's eyes went wide, and his whole body just relaxed. He stopped fidgeting. He stopped bouncing on his heels. He just stood there, licking the cone with a trance-like focus. When he came back to the porch, I asked him what flavor it was. "I don't know," he mumbled, his voice thick and dreamy. "Just the best. It tastes like the best day ever." I tried to take a lick, but he pulled away aggressively, snapping at me like a feral dog protecting a bone. "Get your own," he hissed. That wasn't like him. Mikey was the kid who shared everything. I let it go, figuring it was just the heat making him cranky. But then the pattern started. Every day at 3 p.m., the music would drift down the street. And every day, the kids in the neighborhood would emerge from their houses like they were being summoned. It wasn't just Mikey. It was the Baker twins next door. It was Billy, the husky kid who lived on the corner. They all lined up, silent and motionless, waiting for the white truck. By the second week, I noticed the physical changes. The kids who ate the special started looking faded. That's the only way I can describe it. Their skin took on a waxy, grayish quality. They lost weight rapidly. Mikey, who was usually a ball of energy, stopped playing soccer. He spent his mornings sleeping and his afternoons sitting on the curb, staring down the road, waiting for that music. I tried to tell my mom. I told her Mikey looked sick. I told her the ice cream man gave me the creeps. She brushed it off. She was working double shifts at the hospital and was too exhausted to argue. She just gave Mikey another $5 to keep him quiet. I decided to investigate on my own. I wasn't going to buy the ice cream, but I wanted to get a closer look at the truck. The next time it rolled up, I walked down the driveway with Mikey. The heat was unbearable, nearly 100 degrees. The driver was serving Billy. I stood just behind my brother, watching. The inside of the truck was freezing. I could feel the cold air rolling out of the window, but it didn't smell like vanilla or sugar. It smelled sterile. It smelled like rubbing alcohol and something metallic like copper. I looked past the driver, trying to see the kitchen area. There were no freezers full of boxes. There were no sinks. The back of the truck was lined with metal cabinets, floor to ceiling, each with a small digital display on the front. They looked like the lockers you see in a high-tech laboratory, or maybe a morgue. The driver's eyes snapped to mine. He stopped scooping. "Can I help you, young man?" His voice was a dry rasp, like sandpaper sliding over stone. "What flavor is that?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "It is whatever you need it to be," he said. "Would you like a taste?" He held out a scoop. The pink substance glistened in the sun. For a second, just a split second, I felt an overwhelming urge to grab it. It smelled intoxicating, like fresh rain and nostalgia. I bit the inside of my cheek to snap myself out of it. "No thanks," I said. "I'm lactose intolerant." The driver's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the air seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Pity," he whispered. "You have such potential." He handed Mikey his cone, and his long fingers lingered on my brother's wrist. He wasn't just handing over food. He was checking something. He was feeling for a pulse. That night, Mikey was violently ill. He was sweating, shaking, crying out in his sleep. I sat by his bed, wiping his forehead with a cool washcloth. He kept mumbling about the white room and the needles. I thought it was just a fever dream. The next day, Billy, the kid from the corner, didn't come home for dinner. The police were called. They did a canvass of the neighborhood. Everyone assumed he had run away or gone down to the creek and gotten hurt. But I knew. I felt it in my gut. I rode my bike past Billy's house and saw his parents sobbing on the front lawn. That afternoon, the truck didn't come. Mikey was pacing the living room, scratching at his arms until they bled. He was going through withdrawal. That's when it hit me. The ice cream wasn't food. It was bait, and it was drugging them. 2 days later, the truck returned. It was late, almost dusk. The sun was setting, casting long, bloody shadows across the street. The music started, that slow, chiming melody. Mikey bolted for the door. I tried to grab him, but he was surprisingly strong. He shoved me into the wall and ran out into the twilight. I scrambled after him. I saw him running toward the truck, which was parked at the very end of the cul-de-sac near the woods. The driver was there, leaning out the window, but he wasn't serving ice cream. He was opening the back doors. I sprinted. "Mikey, stop!" My brother didn't hear me. He walked right up to the back of the truck. The driver stepped out. He was holding a cloth. Before I could reach them, the driver grabbed Mikey, clamped the cloth over his face, and threw him into the back of the van like a sack of flour. "Hey!" I screamed, my voice cracking. "Let him go." The driver looked at me. He didn't look worried. He looked annoyed. He slammed the doors shut and jumped into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life, not the chugging sound of an old van, but the high-pitched whine of a high-performance engine. I didn't have a car. I had a bicycle, but I knew the woods. I knew why the old service roads cut through the trees. If he was taking the main road out of town, he had to pass the old abandoned textile factory. I cut through the yards, jumping fences, pedaling until my lungs burned and my legs felt like jelly. I made it to the factory just as the white truck pulled into the loading bay. The driver unalived the lights. I ditched my bike in a patch of kudzu and crept toward the building. It was a massive, rotting structure, the windows broken out decades ago. The truck was parked inside the main warehouse floor. I hid behind a rusted forklift and watched. The driver got out. He was joined by two other men, both wearing white lab coats. They opened the back of the truck and dragged Mikey out. He was unconscious, limp. They placed him on a gurney and wheeled him toward a section of the factory that had been set up with plastic sheeting and bright surgical lights. I moved closer, terrified that my sneakers would squeak on the concrete. What I saw in that makeshift operating theater will haunt me until the day I die. It wasn't just Mikey. There were 3 other kids there. I recognized Billy. He was strapped to a table, a tube running from his arm into a large glass canister. The canister was filled with a dark, viscous red fluid. But it wasn't just blood. It was glowing faintly. The tall driver was speaking to the men in coats. This batch is prime. The saturation levels are perfect. The bait worked faster than anticipated. Organs? One of the men asked. Harvest the liver and the kidneys, the driver said casually, as if ordering lunch. Pack the rest for disposal. We move in an hour. They were going to cut my brother open. I didn't have a weapon. I didn't have a plan. I just had pure, adrenaline-fueled panic. I saw a fire alarm pole station on the column next to me. I didn't know if it still worked, but it was my only shot. I grabbed a rusted metal pipe from the floor and smashed the box, then yanked the lever. For a second, nothing happened. Then, a deafening mechanical klaxon began to blare, echoing off the metal walls. Branning. The men jumped. Security. One of them yelled. We've been compromised. Pack it up, now. The tall driver screamed. In the chaos, they turned their backs on the gurneys. I rushed forward. I didn't try to fight them. I just grabbed the gurney Mikey was on and shoved it as hard as I could toward the open loading bay door. The wheels squeaked, and the momentum carried it out onto the asphalt. The boy, one of the men shouted. I grabbed Mikey's arm and yanked him off the gurney. Run, Mikey, wake up. I slapped his face. He groaned, his eyes fluttering open. The tall driver was coming at me. He had a scalpel in his hand. His face was twisted into a mask of inhuman rage. His jaw unhinged slightly, revealing rows of small, needle-like teeth. I swung the metal pipe blindly. It connected with his knee with a sickening crunch. He howled a sound that wasn't human, more like a high-pitched frequency that shattered glass. I dragged Mikey into the woods. We ran through the briars and the darkness, listening to the sounds of shouting and engines revving behind us. We didn't stop until we hit the main highway and flagged down a trucker. When the police arrived at the factory an hour later, the truck was gone. The medical equipment was gone. All that was left were the tire tracks and a single stainless steel tub overturned on the floor, spilling that pink, sweet-smelling sludge onto the dirty concrete. They found Billy's body 2 weeks later in a drainage ditch 3 counties over. He was missing his kidneys. Mikey survived, but he was never the same. He spent months in therapy. He doesn't remember the factory. He doesn't remember the men. But sometimes, when we're walking past an ice cream shop or a bakery, he'll freeze. He'll catch a scent of something sweet, and his face will go pale, his eyes wide with a terror he can't name. And as for me, I still see that white truck in my nightmares. And sometimes, on really hot days, when the air is shimmering off the road, I swear I can hear that music box melody, slow and chiming, calling out for the next batch of children. I've always been a night owl, which is why I took the job at the logistics center. It was easy money. I sat in a guard shack from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., monitoring a gate that rarely opened. The facility was massive, a sprawling concrete complex surrounded by miles of dense, swampy forest. It was isolated, the kind of quiet where you can hear your own blood pumping in your ears. The loneliness gets to you after a while. You start talking to yourself. You start imagining things in the shadows of the tree line. So, when the food truck started showing up, I was actually relieved. I just wanted some human interaction. It appeared about a month into my employment. It was a matte black step van, sleek and modern, with purple neon lights glowing underneath the chassis. It had no logo, no phone number, just a serving window that slid open with a smooth hiss. It parked on the gravel shoulder just outside the company property line, right near my guard shack. It was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. I walked over, my flashlight beam cutting through the fog. The guy inside was massive. He had to be 6'5", with a beard that covered half his face and tattoos of butcher knives and cleavers running up his forearms. He wore a black apron that looked like it was made of leather. "Rough night, boss?" he asked. His voice was deep, booming, but friendly. "Starving," I said. "You're a long way from the city. Do you actually get customers out here?" He laughed. "You'd be surprised. Truckers, drifters, late-night wanderers. Everyone needs to eat. I'm Chef." "I'm Sam," I said. "What's good?" "The burger," he said immediately. "It's my specialty. The meat is ethically sourced, free-range, very fresh. I bought one. It was expensive, $15, but the smell was intoxicating. It smelled like hardwood smoke and rosemary. I took it back to my shack and took a bite. I'm not exaggerating when I say it was the best thing I had ever eaten. The meat was incredibly tender, juicy, with a rich, gamey flavor I couldn't place. It wasn't beef. It wasn't pork. It was savory and sweet at the same time. I devoured it in 3 bites. That became my routine. Every night at 2 a.m., the black truck would roll up. Chef would be there, grilling. We'd talk. He was charming, in a dark sort of way. He told me stories about his travels, about the different ingredients he'd found in different parts of the country. I never questioned him. I was just happy for the company and the food. But there were red flags. I was just too hungry to see them. Sometimes the meat tasted slightly metallic, like I was biting on a penny. Chef told me it was the iron content in the high-quality soil the animals grazed on. Sometimes the truck smelled like bleach, strong enough to make my eyes water. Chef said he was a clean freak. Then came the night of the hiker. It was a Thursday. Around midnight, I saw a guy walking down the desolate access road. He was young, maybe 20, carrying a large red backpacking bag. He looked exhausted. He waved at me, asked if he could use the phone. I told him I wasn't allowed to let civilians into the guard shack company policy, but there was a gas station about 5 miles up the road. He nodded, looked disappointed, and kept walking into the darkness. 2 hours later, the black truck arrived. I walked out to meet Chef. He seemed different tonight. Agitated, sweaty. He was scrubbing the stainless steel counter with a wire brush, scrubbing so hard his knuckles were white. "Hey, Chef," I said. "The usual?" He snapped his head up. His eyes were wide, the pupils dilated. "Sam, my man? Yeah, the usual. Give me a minute. The grill is heating up." I leaned against the side of the truck. "Quiet night?" "Not really," he muttered. "Had a delivery." "Oh yeah? I saw a kid walking this way earlier. Hiker. Red backpack. Wonder if he made it to the gas station." Chef stopped scrubbing. The silence that followed was heavy. He looked at me, and a slow, greasy smile spread across his face beneath the beard. "A hiker, huh? Red backpack?" "Yeah, I think I saw him." He turned back to the grill. I heard the sizzle of meat hitting the flat top. "Here you go, Sam," he said a few minutes later, handing me the paper-wrapped burger. "This one is on the house. Extra fresh." I took it. "Thanks, Chef." I went back to the shack. I unwrapped the burger. It was steaming. The cheese melted perfectly. I took a huge bite. It was delicious, as always. But as I chewed, my teeth hit something hard. I froze. I thought it was a piece of bone. I spit the mouthful out into a napkin. It wasn't a bone. It was a small silver ring, a nose ring, with a tiny blue stud. I stared at it, my brain trying to process what I was seeing. I remembered the hiker. I remembered seeing a glint of silver on his nose when he asked to use the phone. My stomach dropped. Cold sweat erupted all over my body. I looked at the burger in my hand. The meat was pink in the middle. I stood up, knocking my chair over. I looked out the window. The truck was still there. Chef was cleaning his knives. I needed to know. I needed to be wrong. I grabbed my heavy-duty flashlight and my pepper spray. I walked out of the shack. I tried to act casual, but my legs were shaking so bad I could barely walk. "Hey, Chef," I called out. "I think I dropped my wallet near your truck." "Check around the back," he yelled. "I'm closing up." I walked around the side of the truck. The back doors were slightly ajar. I could hear music coming from inside opera. Loud, dramatic opera music. I reached the back doors. I didn't look for my wallet. I grabbed the handle and yanked the door open. The smell hit me first. It wasn't food. It was copper and bowels. The interior of the truck was covered in plastic sheeting, splashed with bright red arterial spray. On the prep table in the center of the truck was the red backpack. It was cut open, clothes scattered everywhere. And next to it, I saw a foot. A human foot, severed at the ankle, sitting in a plastic bin labeled ground chuck. I gagged, clapping a hand over my mouth. I stumbled back, my boots crunching on the gravel. "Find what you were looking for, Sam." I spun around. Chef was standing right behind me. He was holding a meat cleaver. It was dripping. "You?" I stammered. "You unalive him." "I processed him," Chef corrected, his voice calm, almost soothing. "There's a difference. People are waste, Sam. They wander around consuming, taking up space. I just recycle them into something useful, something delicious. And you loved it, didn't you? You loved every bite." He took a step toward me. I didn't think. I sprayed the pepper spray directly into his eyes. He roared, dropping the cleaver and clutching his face. "You little maggot." I ran. I sprinted back to the guard shack, slammed the door, and locked it. I hit the panic button under the desk that summoned the state police. Chef was pounding on the reinforced glass of the shack. "I fed you, Sam. We broke bread. You're just like me now. You're a cannibal, Sam. How does that taste?" He slammed his fist against the glass one last time, leaving a bloody smear, and then ran back to the truck. I watched on the monitors as the black truck peeled out, gravel spraying everywhere, disappearing into the night. The police arrived 20 minutes later. They found the red backpack in the ditch where he'd thrown it. They confirmed the DNA in the grease trap of the truck's parking spot matched the missing hiker. They never found Chef. They never found the truck. I quit that job. I went vegetarian. I can't look at meat without gagging. But the worst part isn't the memory of what I saw in that truck. The worst part is the memory of the taste. Sometimes late at night, when I'm hungry, I catch myself missing it. I catch myself craving that burger. And that scares me more than any man with a cleaver ever could. I know what I ate. I know who I ate. And God help me, it was delicious. You know the sound. It's the soundtrack of summer suburbia. The tinny, distorted melody of an ice cream truck. It's supposed to be nostalgic. It's supposed to signal bomb pops and push-ups. But in my neighborhood, that sound means something else entirely. It means lock your doors. It means turn off your lights. It means pray he doesn't stop in front of your house. I live in a cul-de-sac called Oakwood Terrace. It's a wealthy area. High fences, manicured lawns, expensive security systems. I've lived here for 3 years, and I've never slept well. I have chronic insomnia. I spend most of my nights sitting in the dark of my living room, watching the street through the blinds, waiting for the sun to come up. That's how I became the watcher. That's how I noticed the pattern. It started about 2 weeks ago. It was 3:13 a.m. I was reading a book when I heard it. Do your ears hang low? Do they wobble to and fro? But it wasn't right. The music was slowed down, warped, like a vinyl record being dragged by a heavy hand. The pitch was deep, guttural. It sounded less like a song and more like a groan. I went to the window. A van was crawling up the street. It wasn't a standard ice cream truck. It was an old rusted Econoline, the kind that looks like it has tetanus painted on. There were no pictures on the side. No caution, children sign. Just a massive rusted speaker bolted to the roof with industrial brackets. It rolled slowly past my house and stopped in front of the Miller's place across the street. The Millers were on vacation in Europe. The truck just sat there, idling. The engine made a low, rattling cough. The music kept playing that slow, demonic loop. I watched through my binoculars. I couldn't see a driver. The windows were tinted pitch black. But I saw something on the roof, right next to the speaker. A small mechanical arm extended. A camera lens swiveled. It pointed at the Miller's front door, then their side window, then the second-floor bedroom. It moved with robotic precision. It sat there for exactly 10 minutes. Then the camera retracted and the truck drove away. 2 days later, the Millers came home to an empty house. They had been robbed. The police were baffled. The alarm hadn't triggered. The thieves knew exactly where the sensors were. They knew exactly where the wall safe was hidden, behind the painting in the study. It was a surgical strike. I told the police about the truck. The officer looked at me like I was a senile old man. An ice cream truck, sir? At 3 a.m.? Are you sure you weren't dreaming? They took a report, but I knew they threw it in the trash the second they left. A week later, the truck came back. Same time. 3:13 a.m. This time, the music was Pop Goes the Weasel, but again, slowed down to a terrifying bass-heavy drone. Pop goes. The Weasel. It stopped in front of the Henderson house. 2 doors down. The camera extended. It scanned the property. The thermal imaging, the audio recording it was mapping the house. It was learning the layout. The Hendersons were robbed the next night, but this time they were home. It was a home invasion. They were tied up, beaten. The thieves knew the code to the panic room. I knew I was next. I was the only house on the block that hadn't been hit or scanned yet. Last night, I prepared. I wasn't going to call the cops and wait 20 minutes for them to show up. I barred my front door. I loaded my shotgun. I sat in the dark, waiting. At 3:13 a.m., the music started. Ring Around the Rosie. Pockets full of posies. The sound vibrated in my chest. I watched the headlights sweep across my living room wall. The truck crawled up the driveway. It didn't stop on the street. It pulled right into my driveway. It sat there, idling. I crept to the window. The camera on the roof extended. It pointed directly at me. I was behind the blinds in the dark, but I knew it could see me. Thermal. It could see my heat signature. I wasn't going to let it map my home. I wasn't going to be a victim. I unlocked the front door and stormed out, racking the shotgun. "Get out of here!" I screamed. "I'm armed. Get off my property." I aimed the gun at the driver's side windshield. "Show me your hands." There was no movement inside the truck. The music stopped abruptly. Silence fell over the neighborhood. Then, the driver's side window rolled down. I expected a man. I expected a criminal in a ski mask. The seat was empty. There was no steering column, no pedals. The dashboard was a mass of wires and server banks blinking with green lights. A robotic actuator was attached to the gear shift. It was a drone. A remote-controlled surveillance unit. A voice crackled from the loudspeaker on the roof. It wasn't the music anymore. It was a synthesized digital voice. Cold, emotionless. "Subject identified," the voice said. "Evans Arthur. Occupant armed. Threat level high." I froze. "Who are you?" "Scanning for vulnerabilities," the voice continued. The camera lens zoomed in. I heard the click of a shutter. Smart lock on back door, firm. Windows reinforced. Weakness detected. Basement bulkhead. It was analyzing my house in real time. It was telling me how it was going to get in. "I'm calling the police," I yelled, backing up toward my door. "Cellular jamming active," the truck replied. "Landlines cut. Isolation confirmed." I pulled my phone out of my pocket. "No signal. Deployment initiated," the truck said. The back doors of the van burst open. I expected men to jump out. Instead, I heard the skittering. Something scrambled out of the back of the truck. It looked like a dog, but it was made of metal and carbon fiber. A robotics unit. It had a camera for a head and a hydraulic jaw. Then another one jumped out. And another. 3 mechanical hounds. They didn't bark. They just made a whirring sound as their servos engaged. "Target acquired," the truck said. "Purge mode engaged." I fired the shotgun. The blast hit the first robot, sending it spinning across the driveway in a shower of sparks. But it just righted itself, shaking off the damage like it was nothing. I turned and ran inside, slamming the heavy oak door and throwing the deadbolt. I heard the heavy thud of metal bodies hitting the wood. They were throwing themselves against the door. I ran to the kitchen to check the back door. Through the glass, I saw one of the machines tearing at the screen, its metal claws shredding the mesh. I retreated to the second floor. I'm in the bathroom now. I've pushed the heavy vanity in front of the door. I can hear them downstairs. I can hear the click-clack of their metal claws on the hardwood floor. They are searching. I'm recording this on my voice memo app, hoping the upload works if the jammer turns off. The truck is still outside. The music has started again. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. They're at the bathroom door. I can hear the wood splintering. If you find this recording, Don't trust the ice cream truck. Don't let it scan you. If you hear the music, run. Run before it learns your name. They're in. And that's all for tonight. Remember, the most terrifying monsters are the ones that look just like us. The ones who might even live right next door. If these stories serve as a good reminder to trust your instincts, then show your support and like and subscribe. Hitting that bell means you'll get a warning before the next nightmare begins. Sleep well, if you can.